Woo, look at those beautiful greens. Hey everybody, I'm Joe the Home Gardener here in my garage hydroponic garden in the middle of February while it's snowing outside to tell you about all of my different hydroponic systems. I have pretty much every type of hydroponic system going in my garage right now, and I'm going to walk you through it and tell you about the different types of systems and why you may want to use them. Here we go. Let's start with the NFT system. Now, I'm starting with this one because this seems to be the one that's very common right now because people can buy some PVC and start their own veggie system. It works extremely well, and it works best with short growing crops. So that's crops like lettuces, chard and kale, anything that's not going to grow more than a few months before you take it out and replace it. Works really well with lettuces because you just harvest the whole lettuce and then plant some more and you're off to the races. Here's some new babies that are just getting started that I just put in the system. We're also growing a lot of chard right now. And chard and kale aren't my favorite plants to grow in the NFT system because they use a lot of nutrients and also they get pretty big. Their roots get pretty big and they clog up the system. So you have to make sure that you watch that and change them out before they clog up your system. The important thing to know about an NFT system is that you're growing with the roots exposed, and plants do fine like that for a few months. But after a few months, generally speaking, the health of the plant is going to go downhill, and they're also going to max out the amount of space that they can get in those little tubes. So I recommend only growing short term plants and harvesting them regularly and replacing them with new healthy plants. Now the other thing is, you may notice that I have NFT channels and not PVC. And I made that choice because I wanted this wide, flat surface area. I don't want to have a round surface area that will trap a lot of moisture and also give it more space for the roots to clog. So I go with the systems that the professionals use as much as possible, and in that case that's the flat NFT channels. And this is running all the time. That's another question that I see online a lot, and I do have the NFT channels running 24/7. They run all the time and keep those plants nice and moist. If you keep these systems off for even a short time, the roots will dry out and your plants are going to go downhill. Next, here is a sort of modified flooded drain table. Now, right now we're growing peas, carrots in this in cocoa coir in pots, and actually it was just kind of an experiment to see how the carrots would do in a system like this, and they're doing great. Now I do have drip emitters, but what I found is that the carrots aren't getting enough drip, so I'm actually letting the table flood a little bit so that they can also feed from the bottom of the pots. So they're getting plenty of moisture, but like I said, it's kind of a modified flood and drain system. And you may find that with what you do, that your systems are not a pure hydroponic system, but you can kind of mix the systems a little bit to achieve what you need to achieve. I even have a few tomato plants in here just to function as a nursery before I move them into the bigger tomato system. So I just had that space there and I stuck those 3 tomatoes there because I needed somewhere to put them. So don't worry if it doesn't always go perfectly. Look how beautiful those peas are doing. And again, we just kind of tried it out, and they're getting some flood water and they're also getting a drip. So here's a pure drip system. This is my vine crop system, which only gets fed by a drip. But the pots do absorb a little bit through what's left in the beto buckets, but those drain pretty thoroughly, so it's just being fed a drip from the top. I have 2 drippers on each plant to make sure that it's real evenly watered, and this system comes on 4 times a day, just like the other ones that are anything that has a drip emitter that I use, I do 4 times a day. And look, the healthy, beautiful shishito pepper plant We've gotten hundreds of peppers off of this plant, and it's still producing after several months. Dozens and dozens of peppers every day. We get yellow peppers, we've got red bell peppers, and I've gotten literally dozens and dozens of cucumber off of just one cucumber vine that's been producing now since last July when it was planted. So that's a really old cucumber plant and still producing lots of fruit. The tomatoes are also on a dripper, and the tomatoes, you can see my other video what I think about that. They're really just too overgrown. Here's my new crop of tomatoes, which right now I'm just hand watering. So that's another option. You can also hand water your plants without any kind of automated system. I just pour water on them a couple of days. The only thing is you have to remember that since it's hydroponic, this cocoa does not retain moisture the way soil does. It drains all the way out, and there's no moisture for the plants to find without that, and there's also no nutrients for the plants to find without whatever you're introducing. So you gotta make sure you feed them regularly, no matter what you do with a hydroponic. So that's a drip system. The strawberries are on a drip system in smaller pots. It's just 1 gallon pots in these window boxes because I wanted to keep the strawberries a little bit more contained. Their roots don't have to get that huge. For root vegetables, I'm using a flood and drain system. I made another video about this new system that I just put in, and we're just actually developing it. I have put this one shelf in. The next shelf is going right here. I just hung the light here for the second shelf, and that'll go in there. And then we're gonna do 2 more of those next door here. So we'll have 4 shelves going with flood and drain, and that is really, really good for feeding plants from the bottom, like these carrots that we're expecting to do really, really nicely. So we'll see how they compare. We've got the carrots over here on the drip system that are gonna be ready in a couple of weeks. And then we've got these carrots in here going on the flood and drain system that are gonna be ready in another month or so. And then the new and improved version in these carrot-shaped cells, which I'm really excited about because we're pretty confident we're gonna get bigger and better carrots with this system. So we'll see how that compares to the ones that grow in the pots. The bottom line is, if you're growing long-term plants, like something that's gonna be around for years, like strawberry, we could keep these berries for several years. That pepper too, we could keep that going for a couple of years until the plant health starts to go down. The cucumbers I replace a little bit more frequently. You know, if you get like this plant, 6 months worth of harvesting out of a cucumber, that's really, really good. We've gotten an awful lot of cucumbers off of that one plant. We have already replaced a couple of other plants that finished out. So we had a snacking cucumber here that produced for a solid 6 months, and then it petered out. The plant stopped producing, and then it pretty much died. And so I replaced that, and this is a sucker that I rooted off of the big cucumber here, and that's just starting out its life, and we'll see how it does for the next several months. This is a new lemon cucumber that we planted that, to be honest, hasn't thrived, and I'm probably going to replace this plant because that plant's about a month old, if not more, and it really hasn't done anything. I put it in this pot probably 2 weeks ago, and it's still there. So that's the other thing you want to do, is make sure that you're only growing real strong plants. If a plant isn't strong enough, just replace it, because it's a limited amount of space and a lot of resources that I'm using here, and I want to make sure that they do well. Here's another one that I rooted, and you see that elbow? That elbow has grown just since I transplanted this, which has only been 2-3 days. So I would say that this plant has done more in a few days than this plant has done in a couple of weeks. So that one's probably gonna go. All right, I'm off of the topic of the subject here, and I still have a whole nother type of system to show you, which is another one that people use a lot. Excuse the mess, it's a little messy in here right now. Deep water culture. Now, I don't have a lot of deep water culture plants, but I do have one, And it's a grapefruit tree that we started from a seed. And deep water cultures, just that. There's nothing except the roots and the water. It's growing in these cocoa chips, and it's got its own little air bubbler in there. And here's the air bubbler. And the taproot has gotten real big. The taproot has actually doubled back on itself because it ran out of room. And we don't know what that little grapefruit tree is going to do, but there you have it. Deep water culture can work really, really well. The so-called crack key method people like a lot these days, which is the method where you don't use air, but I really suggest adding air. You can get a little air pump for just a few dollars, and they use hardly any electricity, and it really makes a big difference when you introduce a lot of oxygen to your plants. You get these kinds of results. You know, I pump a lot of oxygen into all the plants, into all the reservoirs, and it really makes a big difference on the plant health. You get more out of your nutrients. You have less pests, less problems with bacteria and algae, and just better plant health. So overall, I recommend using air bubblers, using an air pump, and the one actually that I really like is the big General Hydroponics pumps, which is a much more powerful pump than these little aquarium pumps. This little aquarium pump, and really doesn't do a lot compared to the General Hydroponics pump. So I recommend that, and more recommendations to come. I hope you find this useful. And again, my main point is, for a long-term crop, give the plant soil. It's what nature intended. It's how plants are used to growing. It gives a more stable, uniform, and comfortable environment for the plant to succeed. And if you're growing short-term crops, then go ahead and use the NFT. Now, one thing I see people doing a lot with their little NFT systems is using, they'll put pots with cocoa or rock wool in the holes. And you really don't have to do that. I'm growing with nothing but this. Just a 1-inch cube. This is called the Oasis cube, which I like a lot. Fits right in there. And that's it. That's all these plants have. And these are, you know, these have just been harvested yesterday too, by the way. These are what I call the, you know, the babies. They're not even there yet. There's a romaine lettuce that's coming in nicely. And yeah, these were all just cut down just yesterday, so they've been trimmed back quite a bit. But they do great just with that little cube. Please subscribe. I will post more videos, and I would love to hear some comments of what you'd like to see and what you think of my videos. I'm kind of new to be doing these videos, and I'm sure I'll learn a lot and progress as we do more, and would like to hear what you all think. Look at those yellow cucumber flowers up there. New cucumbers appeared. Gardening is always an adventure.